These are just staircases in New Deal buildings. They didn't have to look this way, but they do. Part of the idea is that I think that this is really an expression of the old arts and crafts movement, which Eleanor Roosevelt in particular was interested in, the idea that you build self-respect by building beautiful things, particularly things that other people, that the public, can use. This is a janitor at East Bakersfield High School who once he checked me out to make sure I was on the up and up while I was photographing the WPA High School at East Bakersfield, said, "Come on in, I've got to show you something." And there was this beautiful wood inlay mosaic on the inside showing Bakersfield past, present, and future. Our schools of that time are frequently art galleries, wonderful art galleries of art, which is now no longer public. Very difficult to see this stuff anymore. This is a marble mosaic at the Alameda County Courthouse. This is actually at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., which is WPA. This is in the San Francisco Zoo at the Mother's House, a mosaic by Helen Bruton. And then there's the beautiful rock work. They didn't build porta potties. This is a restroom in Yosemite, built by the CCC. This is the bathhouse over at Lake Temescal Regional Park. These are things that we just discovered around a county fairgrounds. That's built by the CCC above Phoenix, and we're always looking for the plaques, though we don't often find them. And then there's artwork, which celebrates people doing ordinary but absolutely indispensable stuff like post office work. And this is up at Timberline Lodge outside of Portland, just showing workers. They were not used to seeing themselves portrayed in public work, or to getting classes in labor journalism, as over at Berkeley. And this, of course, would get people in trouble when congressmen found out that this was happening. And sometimes the art could get the artists in trouble, such as the Coit Tower murals, where you actually see angry workers. Let's just look at a few of the different kinds of structures around California. This is the Cucamonga City Hall, built by the WPA with the inscription, "The noblest motive is the public good." The noblest motive is the public good. Imagine anybody saying that today. So the idea is that this kind of work is a noble endeavor. County courthouses like this one in Alameda, San Luis Obispo. There are many more. City halls all over California in a variety of different styles, all of them beautifully built. This one is at Burbank. It hasn't been touched. It's absolutely spectacular. Movies are shot there. Fire stations all over the place. And police stations and armories. That's the police stables out in Golden Gate Park that we visit every year during Labor Fest. And then public libraries. Here are two in San Francisco, the one at Bernal Heights and the one at West Portal, which has a WPA plaque on it, and then one at North Berkeley. Public hospitals, clinics, and TB Sanitaria. Remember that as well as polio, people did get tuberculosis then, and they provided many clinics for these. This is one at Madera. And remember that counties were really strapped for funds at that time. They couldn't afford public hospitals, and so the WPA and the PWA gave it to them. And children got health care for the first time. Adults did too, as a matter of fact. We were headed for a national health care system, but it never happened. We treat things, again, differently now. Essentially, what we have of Medi-Cal is going to be slashed too. Then flood control. As an environmentalist, I have problems with this, but it did make the concrete industry very healthy and happy to lay that much concrete in Southern California, without which a good deal of Southern California would get washed into the Pacific every winter when we have an El Nino year. And then the CCC and the WPA workers were trained for disaster relief and recovery afterwards, so we didn't have to rely on the National Guard. And they were here at that time, by the way. And so these kinds of things would not happen or be as frequent or disastrous as they are. This is a group of students from San Jose State who began a march saying that we, in fact, need a new WPA to rebuild the Gulf Coast. They're walking over WPA sidewalks next to the San Jose Municipal Stadium, which is WPA. And this was a demonstration outside of one of Dianne Feinstein and Dick Bloom's 5 or 6 houses of people demanding that the public housing not be torn down in New Orleans because of the damage from the hurricane. The New Deal moved in and gave rural areas electricity and water. This is one up in Modoc County, where the subscribers are actually the members of that co-op. And then we have cheap hydroelectric energy, largely because of New Deal projects. And then there were sustainable communities. People think that they're discovering this at this time. In fact, there were a number of experiments at that time. This one was down in Georgia, but there were at least 100 of these model towns built so that people could be self-sufficient. This is one out in Maryland, Greenbelt, just outside of Washington, D.C., where there's pedestrian separation. It's a model town where right on Roosevelt Plaza you have the New Deal Cafe, right across from the co-op. And then urban roads like these ones in Los Angeles, across the Los Angeles River. And here's O'Shaughnessy Boulevard being built by WPA workers. There's Miraloma Park and Mount Davidson up there. This is Lake Merced Boulevard being built. It's all made out of sand, so that you can imagine that when we have a quake, in fact, a lot of that's just going to slump. It's going to be spectacular. And then these are the roads built by the WPA up in the Oakland Hills, Snake, Redwood, Grizzly Peak, Skyline, which then enabled the developers to go up there and develop the hills. And then so many of our rural roads, in fact, are built by the CCC or the WPA, such as the roads that go through the Coast Range. The farmers don't realize, in fact, this was enabled them to get their stuff to the markets in all weather. This is a road through the Coast Range being built by the CCC. This is a bridge being built across one of the rivers. Here's the Coast Road being built, Highway 1. And you won't know except you look at the bridge abutments and you'll see dates like 1938, 1939 in that sans serif type that's so familiar. Most of our airports are WPA. The airstrips are largely CCC out in the counties. There's San Francisco's 2 airports, the original one down in San Mateo and the one out on Treasure Island, Long Beach, Burbank. Harbor improvement, all of the harbors in California were improved. This is Oakland, and the whole Beltline Railroad was redone by the WPA, as was Pier 19 is a PWA project. And then our public spaces, especially our great amphitheaters, are largely from that time. That was Woodminster. This is the Santa Barbara Bowl, originally known as the Will Rogers Bowl. This is the Forest Theater down in Carmel. And these are CCC workers in placing huge lichen-encrusted boulders for an enormous amphitheater at the 2,000-foot level of Mount Tamalpais State Park, which they also improved. And here's 6,000 people getting ready to enjoy a performance of Oklahoma in that theater. Big Basin is a CCC project. And this one, just a bit further afield, on the East River, Lower East Side of New York, a project built where people from the Lower East Side could see performances of musical comedies or Shakespeare, and still do. Our parks and recreation are almost all from that, it turns out. The lower 2 are my favorite part of Central Park. That's the Conservatory Garden up near Harlem, which is WPA. In different seasons, I've photographed it all the time. You can almost always tell it because there's beautiful rock work in it. This is up at Juilliard Park in Santa Rosa. But I thought I'd particularly show you San Francisco because I read in the WPA accomplishment report that they improved every single park in San Francisco. I couldn't believe this at first, but now I do. So here's the fly casting pools out at Golden Gate Park, built by the WPA. And here recently was an international fly casting championship. This is the Model Yacht Club there. Here it is today. It's still in use. The stables out there, these are public stables, and they're meant so that the public would have the opportunity previously only available to the elites, as is so often the case, such as with golf, for example. Our public golf courses like Lincoln Park were built by the WPA and are meant to be public. Think of the experiences that people have had in these low-priced golf courses and the history which is embodied in them. A little bit further afield, again, this is over in Oakland. This is Davies Tennis Stadium. It was built in an old quarry, and here it is with, this was a tournament for inner city youth, introducing them to tennis.